What if one forbidden moment, inside a moving carriage, changed everything you thought you knew about love? Before we begin, if you believe in passion that defies society, in stolen glances that burn louder than fire, and in love that risks everything, hit subscribe now. Because this story will stay with you long after it ends. The rain began as a whisper against the carriage roof, soft and uncertain, like the trembling breath between two souls standing too close, yet pretending they were worlds apart. Inside the dimly lit carriage, illuminated only by the flickering lantern swaying with each jolt of the wheels, sat Alara Whitmore, her gloved hands clasped tightly in her lap, her heartbeat echoing louder than the storm gathering outside. Across from her, Lord Adrian Blackthorne said nothing. He hadn't spoken since the carriage door had shut. And yet, his silence was louder than any confession. Alara dared not look at him, though she felt his presence like heat against her skin. Every movement, every breath, every subtle shift of his posture sent ripples through her carefully guarded composure. Society had rules, unyielding, suffocating rules, and tonight, they had already broken too many of them. "You should not have followed me," she whispered finally, her voice barely audible above the rumble of thunder. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his shadow stretching toward her like an unspoken truth. "And yet you did not stop me." Her breath caught. Because he was right. She hadn't stopped him when he stepped into the carriage. Hadn't called for the driver. Hadn't even protested, at least not with conviction. Somewhere deep within her, beneath the layers of propriety and expectation, she had wanted this. This dangerous, reckless proximity. The carriage lurched, and Alara's balance faltered. Instinctively, Adrian reached out, his hand closing around hers. That single touch, through layers of silken restraint, ignited something neither of them could deny any longer. "Do you feel it?" he asked quietly. She looked up then, finally meeting his gaze. And everything changed. Because his eyes held no hesitation. No apology. Only a fierce, consuming intensity that stripped away every lie she had ever told herself. "I feel everything," she confessed, her voice trembling not with fear, but with the overwhelming truth she had tried so desperately to bury. Outside, the rain intensified, drumming harder, faster, as if the world itself were urging them toward something inevitable. Adrian moved closer. Too close. "This is madness," she breathed. "Yes," he agreed, his voice low, almost reverent. "But it is ours." The space between them vanished. What began as a hesitant touch became something deeper, something urgent, his fingers brushing her cheek, her breath catching as his thumb traced the curve of her jaw. Time seemed to collapse inward, every second stretching into something infinite. "Alara," he whispered her name like a prayer. And then, he kissed her. Not gently, not cautiously, but with the force of everything he had held back for far too long. The world outside ceased to exist. There was no society, no expectations, no consequences, only the undeniable pull between them, raw and electric. The carriage became its own universe, sealed off from judgment, where truth was no longer forbidden. She responded without hesitation, because she could not lie anymore. Not to herself, not to him. Her hands found his coat, clutching it as though anchoring herself to the only reality that made sense. The rhythm of the wheels beneath them mirrored the pounding of their hearts, fast and relentless. "You will ruin me," she whispered against his lips. Adrian pulled back just enough to look at her, his expression softened but unwavering. "No," he said. "I will choose you." Those words, simple, yet impossible, shattered the last of her defenses. Because in their world, choice was an illusion. Marriages were arranged. Futures decided. Love was a luxury few could afford. And yet here he was, offering it as though it were the only thing that mattered. The carriage slowed. Reality began to creep back in. Alara felt it first, the cold edge of consequence pressing against the warmth of what they had just shared. Her hands loosened their grip. Her breathing steadied, though her heart refused to obey. "We must stop," she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Adrian didn't move away. Instead, he studied her, memorizing her, perhaps, as though he knew this moment was fleeting. "Tell me you regret it," he said quietly. She opened her mouth. But no words came. Because she didn't. Not even a little. The carriage came to a halt. Outside, the driver's voice called faintly through the rain, announcing their arrival. Everything they had just risked, now stood on the edge of consequence. Alara reached for the door, but Adrian caught her wrist. Not forcefully. Just enough to make her pause. If you walk away now, he said, his voice steady but heavy with meaning, everything returns to what it was. She turned back to him, her eyes searching his. And if I don't? A beat of silence. Then, everything changes. The weight of that truth settled between them. This was not just a moment. It was a decision. A line that, once crossed, could never be undone. Alara took a breath, and for the first time in her life, she chose not what was expected, but what she felt. Slowly, deliberately, she closed the carriage door again. The storm outside raged on. But inside, something even more powerful had taken hold. Something that could not be silenced, contained, or denied. Something that demanded everything, and would take nothing less.